Hello learners, welcome to the course Migrated Women's Literature. Our today's lecture is Migration and Identity, Poetics and Politics. In the previous lecture, we had talked about reasons of migration. People may migrate to regions or countries with more robust economies and greater employment opportunities, where they can find stable and well-paying jobs that contribute to long-term financial stability. Additionally, the better infrastructure, modern amenities with a higher overall quality of life often influence people's decision to migrate. This economic migration is not just about immediate gains, but also about securing a more prosperous and comfortable lifestyle for oneself as well as for future generations. The pursuit of a more secure and profitable environment motivates many to migrate away from regions where political turmoil undermines their safety and well-being. These migrations are driven by a fundamental need for personal security and the preservation of basic human rights in the face of adverse political conditions. The quest for a better life, good education facilities, improved healthcare facilities, etc. can prompt people to move to areas with advanced medical infrastructure. Access to better health care is a significant concern, leading individuals to seek out locations where medical services are more developed and accessible, thereby improving their overall quality of life and health outcomes. As climate conditions worsen, people are driven to migrate from areas that are no longer viable for living due to their environmental challenges. Natural disasters, scarcity of essential resources such as clean water and arable land encourage migration. In regions where resources are depleted or no longer sufficient to sustain the local population, individuals and communities are compelled to move to areas where resources are more abundant and capable of supporting their needs. We have discussed about various reasons and factors of migration. These factors also impact a person's identity in the new place. In today's lecture, we would talk about poetics and politics of identity, which refers to the formation of identity in a new land. First, let's talk about the terms poetics and politics. The term poetics of anything refers to the principles of the theoretical or general aspects of any phenomena or concept. It is the pre-decided norms of that phenomena. Sometimes we also use the term grammar for poetics. Here, we have those notions of identity which have been believed and set as rules. However, these theoretical aspects of identity are not always static. They keep on moving or changing. These aspects vary from culture to culture and society to society. Now, the term politics. It refers to the praxis or practice of something. The implementation of the principles of the theoretical aspects of any phenomena is called praxis. So, here we can say that the application of set norms refers to the praxis or practice of those norms. When we talk about the concept of identity, we can say that how those principles are practiced or performed, that is the praxis of identity. Thus, together, the expression poetics and politics refer to the theory and practice of identity. Now, as we have marked our territory, we may study the same under diasporic conditions. Diasporic people have to struggle at various levels. The struggle is not only limited to the fine-tuning with the new environment, but it asks for more at many other levels. They have to adjust at the level of food, dress, language, and identity. We can understand this with the help of poetics and politics of identity. Quite often, the two, poetics and politics, or the theory and the practice of a phenomena or a concept, are at variance with one another. And in certain situations, the variance becomes actually conflictual. That is, the theory and praxis run contrary to each other, coming into conflict because of two situations. When people do not follow the set principles of any concept, their practices change and therefore come into conflict with others. Second, when the theoretical concepts are not in accordance with the environment. The poetics of anything has a normative function. That is, it signifies an ideal situation, a kind of benchmark against which a practice or an actual situation is measured. In general, normative refers to evaluative standards, the tendency in human cultures to categorize certain behaviors or works as good, desirable, or acceptable, and others as negative, undesirable, or unacceptable, or forbidden, is known as normativity. When we talk about norms, we mean benchmarks that are used to assess or judge actions or results. Normative can also refer to adhering to a descriptive theoretical standard, that is, doing what is customarily done or what the majority of the people are expected to do in real world situations. Now, at times, an actual situation violates the underlying principle of phenomena or runs contrary to it. That is the conflictual situation between the two. In other words, actual situation, the ideals of identity are compromised or changed or adjusted. It means when the behavior goes against the pre-decided norms or anything that is not done as per the societal beliefs, then it remains unacceptable. This situation results in a kind of conflict. So, the theory refers to the ideals that have been already decided or believed to be correct. The practice should go according to the theory so that it should be accepted and considered correct. All that we have said so far is the theoretical background or a kind of screensaver against which we shall study the poetics and politics of identity. Now, let us talk about identity formation. Identity formation is a complex phenomenon, and we have to deconstruct that phenomena into three distinct formative constituent markers. The first marker is being biologically given, markers of which the pigmentation or the color of skin is the most apparent and the most significant. Basically, these are our physical features and physical appearances. How we appear to people, we are identified in that way. For example, some groups of people are referred to as whites while others are designated as non-whites. These are identity markers given biologically, and there are significant values attached to these markers. Biological markers are the features we are born with. The other biological markers being facial features, sharp or flat noses, raised cheekbones, straight or arched eyebrows, thick or thin lips, the hair being straight or curly, and color of the hair. These biological markers too have sometimes values attached to them. These biological markers identify individual members ethnically or racially. Normally, our biological markers get affected by our race and ethnicity. Even the atmosphere of our nation also decides our biological markers. One important point here to be mentioned is that these biological markers not necessarily go after the immediate parents. But a child may receive his features and traits from any generation of his ancestry. For example, children having blue eyes, though their parents have black eyes. So, this feature might have come from someone from their ancestors. And now, the second category of markers that have spoken about are environmentally given, that is, there are certain distinct qualities that members acquire by being a part of a community while living in any specific atmosphere or area. People tend to know about it. Like they understand the atmosphere and their behavior gets directed according to that. They know certain things better than other people who are not a part of that area. So, their knowledge of their surroundings affects their persona and thus design their identity. For instance, members of the Inuit community, the Eskimos, who live in Arctic Circle region can distinguish between 6 different types of snow. This is because snow is what they have around them all the time, all year round. While someone who lives on plains may not understand and differentiate snow so easily. This knowledge of their atmosphere has become a feature of their identity. Let us take another example. Those who breed and keep cattle recognize each of their cattle by their pug marks. For them, these marks are the names of an individual. This identity marker is bestowed upon them because they belong to a community that deals with cattle. This second category of markers is relatively less stable. That is, they can be given up more easily as compared to the biologically given identity markers. When a person's environment changes, these environmentally given markers either decrease or diminish. There can be another situation also. A person living in that same environment but not interested in learning or imbibing those specific traits of his or her community. Thus, he or she would not be carrying the same amount of these markers as other community members would be. Now, the third set of identity markers that are given to a community and its members as part of their cultural identity. These are related to the language they speak, the religious practices they follow, customs and rituals they observe, their distinct dress code, food habits, form and content of their education, practices and manner of their stories, legends, myths and folk tales, and also by their practices of preserving their past, their primary professional occupation, etc. This set of identity marker is most numerous, most significant and most unstable. This is to say that they can be changed or given up relatively easily. With the change in social circle going to a new country, such identity markers get changed. As a person moves from his homeland to a new place, with the passage of time, these identity markers get changed. These 3 sets of identity markers are collectively what may be called the poetics of identity. These are a kind of norm or benchmark against which we measure the practice of identity by individual members of any community. Let us talk about the praxis or practice of identity. While the identity markers cumulatively form the norm, their manifestation in individuals or in the community may vary. This is so because this identity operates in varied circumstances, varied environments. We can say that identity markers keep on changing and the praxis of identity depends upon certain elements like personal, social and cultural. For instance, in a certain situation, person with dark pigmentation may like to change that and become light skinned relatively. We can take the example of fairness creams. Their market exists because the society has created a notion that fair skin is better than dark or not so fair. However, this notion becomes a reason behind a person's desire to change his or her complexion. Therefore, the person moves towards a fairness cream or any other method to change his or her complexion. So, it can be said that identity markers get affected by the social beliefs and operate as per the circumstances and environment. For example, some African persons who have curly hair may not like them and use hot combs to burn and straighten them. This is how the person efforts to follow the trend. Now, this following of the trend has worked upon a person's biologically given identity markers. Similarly, if a group of people of cattle breeding community moves away from or another profession, he, she or they may lose the ability to read the pug marks. Here the environmentally given identity markers have changed. In the same way, a community may change or give up certain practices that are a part of his identity, like change of dressing style, food habits, customs, etc. This happens when a person or a group of people move from one place to other place and adopt new ways of living. Thus, these identity markers are dependent upon personal, social and cultural aspects. And now, a few observations about diaspora, diasporic communities, diasporic situations and operation of identity in these situations. As has been discussed in previous lectures, diaspora refers to a situation where a person leaves his or her motherland and settles down in a new country. We had also talked about that a single person is an expatriate while diaspora refers to a group of people. We had also discussed about various reasons and conditions that drive migration from one place to another. In diaspora, the identity of people does not remain the same. Due to various circumstances, the environmental and cultural identity is either changed or adjusted. Diasporic situation is a very complex situation. By moving physically from one nation to another, diasporic people give up a certain ethos, a certain way of life, including certain identity markers to move into another ethos, another way of life and in the environment of another set of identity markers. Example: moving from Saudi Arabia to the USA may involve moving from a kingship-centered governance to a more democratic one. A person who moves from one to the other experiences a drastic change of environment, culture and behavior. These changes affect the concept of this person and he or she tries to adjust with the new atmosphere, with the new situation. Whereas if some group of people move from say Italy to France. The change of way of life may be more or less similar. Similarly, from Canada to USA. So, here the changes in ethos or way of life may be only nominally different. Let us have some more examples. If one wants to or moves into Quebec area of Canada, one must know French, and that is the law. A diasporic Sikh community may not give up turban because it is a part of their religion. Recently, many European nations like France, Holland, and Denmark don't accept Muslim women wearing an abaya, while these diasporic women are not willing to give that up. The Indians who moved to England in the 60s were asked to change or give up their food habits. They were asked to give up the manner in which they used to cook their food. Looking up at these examples, we can say that there are certain conditions where the adjustments may be difficult to come in effect, such as religious beliefs and rituals, cultural customs, ethnic dresses, traditional foods, etc. In every diasporic situation, we find two societies, the donor society and recipient society. Donor society is also known as the host country. It is the place where the immigrant has arrived. It shows a sometimes totally new set of concepts, beliefs, rituals, customs, culture and behavior. Recipient society is the people from diasporic community. They are at the end of receiving and accepting new norms and values. There can be two situations. Either the diasporic community accepts and continues practicing all the values and cultural patterns from the donor society and gives up its own tradition and ethnic values and customs also. This is the first situation, where the diasporic people give up their old traditional ways and leave behind their customs, beliefs and rituals. Second situation is when the diasporic community is reluctant to imbibe and adopt new ways from the donor society. This reluctance results in conflictual situation. It alienates the recipient society from the donor society. Basically, the diasporic communities adopt a middle way and accept certain cultural values of the donor society while following the age-old traditions and cultures of their motherland. This is the modern diasporic experience. This also is a two-fold situation. Here the second generation who is born in that new land finds it easier to cope up with the trends, values, norms and rituals. Now let's talk about modern diasporic experience. Basically, diasporic communities adopt a middle way and accept certain cultural values of the donor society while following the age-old traditions and culture of their own motherland. This also is a two-fold situation. Here, the second generation who is born in that new land finds it easier to cope up with the norms, trends, values and rituals of this new country, while the older generation who came to that new land as immigrants, they find it hard to manage. For instance, celebrating Halloween is a part of Western culture and it is followed by mostly all of the diasporic youngsters too, whereas their parents still like celebrating Diwali, Holi and Eid because it connects them with their roots. In such a situation, most diasporic communities become Janus faced. Now, When we talk about modern diasporic experience, we see there is an effect of technology also. The people of the modern era who have developed technology, and this technology has helped them in getting connected with other people around the world. And this connection is not only with the new people, can remain connected with their homeland also. So this modern diasporic situation, which is helped by the development of technology, has made things easier for them. Now the adjustment has become easier. It is not as difficult, it is not as tough as it was earlier when the technology was not developed properly. Let us talk about the concept that is called Janus phased. According to the mythology, Janus is a god who is associated with beginnings, gates, transitions, time, duality, doorways, passages, frames and ends in ancient Roman religion and mythology. As Janus could see the past and the future, thus the concept Janus phased has been taken from there. Here, Janus phased refers to a situation where one, while being in the present, keeps on thinking of and looking at the past. Most of the diasporic communities became Janus phased from the very beginning. The diasporic people who migrated in the 1800s were totally stranded on a no man's land. It was a different world for them. They carried their tradition, their values, their beliefs, rituals, religion, customs in the form of memories. Their ethnic identity was the most important for them. On arriving in a new country, they got a cultural shock. Their beliefs and culture were totally different from that new country. Let us take an example of Sikhs migrating to Canada in 1897. When they started their journey from India, they were wearing their traditional dresses. After being in Canada, where they were working as laborers to lay the railway lines, they had to accept the new dress code of the host country, and after age-old stay in that nation, they had almost fully accepted the coat suit as their dress. This is not the only case of dress, but identity markers go through many other changes too. Another example of changes is language. Sometimes the host society puts a restriction on the language of the diasporic community. They do not allow diasporic people to use their ethnic language, to use their mother tongue publicly. For instance, when Parsis landed in India around 1400 years ago, they were compelled to leave Persian, which was their mother tongue, and were asked to accept Gujarati. That is why the Parsi community around the world has Gujarati as their mother tongue now. There can be various such examples where either diasporic people accept the conditions of the donor society fully or partially. Diasporic people are always a part of two nations and two societies. Therefore, they carry their two identities with themselves: ethnic identity and the acquired identity. Ethnic identity is the one that they are born with and later on has been endowed upon them through their religion, culture and society. This identity reflects their roots, while the acquired identity is one that they achieve later on by assimilating into the new culture and into the new society. Ethnic identity is the first identity and acquired identity is received by the diasporic people later on. Now let us talk about poetics and politics of identity in diaspora. During the days of exile, when people did not have much choices, the conditions imposed were accepted fully, however tough they were. Thus, while imbibing the new values and culture, they missed their old traditional and ethnic self. They kept on looking back at the good old days of their motherland. Thus, they were referred to as Janus faced. But in the present era, when technology has reduced the distance and improved the global connectivity, the situation of diasporic people has also changed. Their situation has got updated. Now it is possible to research and know about the place before reaching there, which helps in adjusting with the new situation. Still, the poetics and politics of identity is not free from the impact of social and cultural changes. Diasporic people experience two sets of knowledge, two sets of cultural influences which contrast with each other. Both these sets of knowledge and society construct identity. While the socio-economic reality of both the societies confronts the self. The politics of identity may play out on a diasporic space, leading to various kinds of situations to give up. How much to give up and how much to retain. This is the poetics and politics of identity in a diasporic situation. That's all for today. We will talk about the diasporic literature and the presentation of identity in our next lecture. Thank you.